right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Get Your Head in the Game podcast. I am Dr. Jenna Ross, and I am a mental performance trainer and sport and performance consultant and the owner of Renew Performance. And I am super excited today to have our very special guest on this show, Mr. Eddie Johnson. He had an extensive career in the NBA, played for 17 seasons. He is now the co-host of NBA Today and has done years of broadcasting work. He is also an author, a motivational speaker, and a philanthropist, and has trained many young athletes and mentored them throughout their careers. So we are super excited. I am super excited and honored that you would be part of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. It's always a pleasure to get on TV, Zoom, however you want to call it. And, just talk and talk about what we're doing and obviously what we'd like to see in the future.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to jump into, you played for a really long time. You retired back in 1999 and have done a lot of great things since then. But I want to talk about a little bit about the pressure to perform and what that was like for you back then, and maybe kind of how it's changed today and what you see happening in our culture and our society today. So tell me kind of like, how was that experience for you?
Well, I mean, look, when I first got into sports, I grew up in the city of Chicago, and, life wasn't easy. So I just couldn't just concentrate on sports. I had to concentrate on so many things, finding a different route to school every day.
Yeah, you were raised by a single mom, right?
Yes. But, fortunately, she was a single mom, whereas I never went hungry. I don't know how she did it. I always, if I needed something, I would get. And so she was tremendous. And I'm tell you the truth, I didn't have any pressure in that regard because I did have brothers and sisters around me that helped direct me, kept me on a straight line, learn from their faults. So that part wasn't as pressurized as when I left the house. And when I left the house is when that happened. When you live in the inner city, you're encountering gangs, you're encountering situations that unfortunately you just don't want to be in. But I had to. I had a love for baseball at the time. I had a love for basketball. I was playing even some street hockey, a little football. I just wanted to get out there and just have fun. But unfortunately, I had a time restraint in order to do that.
Yeah.
And so when I navigated that part of it, dealing with the pressures, dealing with being robbed at gunpoint, being, threatened not to, to join gangs and all of that, I think it really carried over into sports. Whereas I had a discipline. My mom, taught me discipline. Be in the house at a certain time. Don't go over there. Don't cross the street over there. And when I established that discipline as a young man, it pretty much carried over into sport. And then I had great coaches that loved me, that cared about me. I had an Italian coach that didn't know anything about basketball in high school. His name was Frank Lolino. And he told me when I first got to the school, he said, "Eddie, you're not going to see daylight." And I didn't understand what he meant. But basically, we practiced, Jenna, at 6 a.m. For school. And then after school, we practiced. So I was getting there in the dark and I was leaving in the dark. And I did that for 4 years. Did not attend any dances. Only went to one dance in high school. That was my senior prom. And it prepared me. And so pressure for me more so was off the court and then being focused and getting my schoolwork and doing those things. When I got on the court, the pressure was easy. I mean, it didn't even affect me because I had confidence in what I could do. And the only pressure I felt, honestly, in sport, Jenna, was more so would the coach play me like I want to be played.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not in your control, right? I mean, your best effort, you can put out 100% of your best effort. You can go 110% of your best effort, but that's up to that coach, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've had some coaches that played that role, that game with me where they didn't. but I felt that pressure in high school. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. I became an All American, All State after my sophomore year in high school. And then, I was recruited by every university in the country.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I had my choice, and that was pressure,
Yeah.
having to pick a school, knowing that I wanted to stay closer to home so my mom can come see me play, but
Mm-hmm.
also being enamored with going, cross country, like to a
Mm-hmm.
school like USC that I thought about going to. So it was those types of pressures that really
Yeah.
affected me. In
Yeah.
this, yeah, that's
That's
it.
all I was going to say. Those are big decisions for somebody who's 18 years old to make about where they're going to go, where they're going to, play for their future, what's going to set them up for success, because that makes a difference, and where you go is who you're going to surround yourself with. One thing that I really loved in your book, The Big Dummy, I'm going to mention this book. This is the book that you wrote. So there was something in there that you mentioned about your high school coach and the 3 Ds. It was the dedication, determination, and desire.
Mhm.
And you said that's what he kind of always instilled in you. And it sounds like you got that not just from that angle from your coach, but from your family and your mom as well, to kind of lay that foundation, so to speak, for you to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I honestly, I've been working since I've been 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy working. Like some people don't. I actually enjoy working. And I first got a city job when I was 14 years old, and I haven't stopped since. I mean, matter of fact, I made one pit stop at the end of my career for a year, and I was just frustrated and I was just depressed in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, dedication to me wanting to work, a desire to provide,
Mm-hmm.
uh, for my family, and a determination that I never fail. Like I'm
Yeah.
not failing. You're not going to look at me and see me fail. And
Mm-hmm.
I had a drive, and yes, my coach instilled that in me, without a doubt. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
still going. At 63, I still have energy to get up every day and do my work. And it carried over to sport, without a doubt. I had a
Yeah.
17-year career, as you mentioned. I played 1 year in Greece,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and so for me, those things stuck with me. And
Mm-hmm.
then, as I told you, the pressures were always: Am I going to play? Am I on the right team? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the pressures also was to provide for my family, so to make sure that when I did negotiate contracts when I got to the NBA, was I getting my due?
Mm-hmm.
Frustration of that. But once all those things were settled,
Mm-hmm.
basketball was easy. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I had my ups and downs, but I was able to recover instantly. Like it didn't affect me. Only
Mm-hmm.
people around the game affected me. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me, was the pressure that I felt constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. The people around you. That's one thing I wanted to kind of talk about was, that comparison factor. Like if you feel like you're comparing yourself. And I think now in our society, that's a bigger deal because of, the things we have, social media, the, ability to compare ourselves more so than before social media and what that was like. So that comparison, for some people these days, if you're not resilient, can really affect you. So did you ever find yourself kind of comparing yourself, or was it, I have my head down, I'm driven? And I think based on your book, you talk a lot about that, but being focused, how did you remain focused on you and what you can control?
Well, one, I just didn't want to fail. Like
Mm-hmm.
that made me stay focused. Like for me, walking into a room full of my peers in college, and they got cocaine spread around the table,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, I'm like, no, that's not happening.
No.
Like, I could sit in the midst of them because I enjoyed their friendship. I enjoyed the camaraderie of hanging around them, not really being cognizant that the police busting here right now. They're going to accuse me too.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's that fine line. But to a man, they'll tell you. they tried and they
Yeah.
never succeeded. Never did drugs in my life.
Yeah.
And I was right there in the middle of it. All I had to do was walk over to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, not doing it because I am focused. I want to make it. And I
Mm-hmm.
am definitely determined and resilient enough to not allow you to take me down that road where now I have to adjust my life. It's just not going to
Yes.
happen. And that's why I got the name of the book, You Big Dummy, because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be that big dummy. And a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers turned into that big dummy,
Mm-hmm.
where they made mistakes and it cost them. And I'm like, I'm not going to work this hard on the basketball court and then
Yeah.
allow something off the court to cost me. I can't, it wasn't in my mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
so my focus was always 100%. I never played a basketball game that I was not trying to win. And
Right.
I was not trying to do my best. And
Mm-hmm.
I played in my whole entire basketball career, I played in maybe 97% of the games presented to me. And the
Yeah.
only ones I missed is because I was injured. I
Yeah.
quit one time. I have to admit, I quit one time in my life, and it
Mm-hmm.
had nothing to do with basketball. It was as a football player.
Oh, wow.
Actually, I was playing in Chicago, and I normally would play quarterback, right? And
Uh-huh.
I was getting bigger and all this, and this coach put me on the offensive line. And look, we playing a game. The wind chill factor was probably about 5 below 0.
Ooh.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm playing against these back then I'm in the inner city. I didn't have many
Mm-hmm.
relationships with whites at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're playing against this white team. These dudes look like they've been fed. I mean, a cow a day. They were huge. And I'm
Yeah.
like, got my hands in that, and it was like it was snow. It was like half snow, half rain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these dudes knocking the stew out of me. Now, my competitive nature got
Mm-hmm.
me to a half. It did. I'm like, and I had some good plays and all that. But after at halftime, I'm like looking at myself and I'm like, Eddie, you got to make a choice. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
these dudes are trying to hurt you. Do you want to play this or do you
Right.
want to play baseball or basketball?
Mm-hmm.
And I came to the realization, man, I'm playing basketball, baseball. I
Mm-hmm.
quit at halftime.
Mm.
And it bothered me that I did because you
Right.
hate to leave your boys, but they understood because they
Yeah.
knew how good of a basketball player I was and I was growing.
Yeah.
The coach was mad. He's so mad at me. He said, well, I'm not driving you home. I said, dude, I will walk. That'll be a lot better than what these dudes doing to me out in this field right now.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
the only time I think I quit
Yeah.
sports.
And you played over what, 1,300 games nearly
And
in
yes,
your entire career.
yes,
And the one
yes.
time you quit, it was in
Couldn't do
football.
it. I could not do it. Now, some people around the game quit on me, and
Mm-hmm.
in regards to coaches, regards to GM that promised me something and didn't, follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches that didn't give me a fair shot, and regardless what I did,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm.
But as a basketball player, no, I went out there and I hurt after every loss, and my
Mm-hmm.
teammates couldn't stand me because they knew that they knew if we lost, I wasn't a good person to be around.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to me, how do you overcome that when the coaches, made decisions or other people made decisions that you didn't agree with that you said, you didn't have control over? What was your, I guess, go-to in those situations to keep
Yeah.
pushing through that?
My first response was just to prove that I was worthy to them.
Mm.
That means work harder, try to do exactly what they wanted me to do, put forth that effort. Because I love to be coached. I thought when I was coached, the best of me came out.
Mm.
And so I just kind of measured and said, okay, case in point, I got traded, I think in my 12th year to the Charlotte Hornets. And they already had a guy that was really good. And I was a reserve, but I was looked at as like one of maybe the top 2 or 3 6 men in the NBA. He was up and coming. He was a little bit younger than me. Dale Curry is Steph Curry's dad. Okay. And so he was already entrenched in the team, and I knew that. So I knew going there that I was going to have to do a little bit extra to get the attention of the coach at the time. His name was Alan Bristow. And when I showed up for training camp, no one was there to greet me, which is unusual in the NBA. Normally, you show up, they have somebody from the team there and all of that. I had to get a cab, went down to his office. I sat out there for about an hour, which is unheard of. Now, by that time, I'm like, you know what? How dare you, man? And so I finally went in his office, and he had the gall to tell me, well, I just don't know. I mean, the reason why I didn't talk to you, I just didn't know what we were going to do. I'm like, hey, man, you can still talk to me and tell me what you're about, right? Yeah. And he's like, well, you know, we already have Dale here. I'm like, why did you trade for me? You know, and he said, at the time, you know, we, you know, blah, 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 all of this. And I was like, look, I said, I don't care about anything you're saying right now. And I honestly told him this to his face. I said, I don't care about anything you're saying. I said, my resume speaks for itself. Now, all you need to do is just be fair. I said, I don't need you or anybody in this organization to give me anything. I'll take it. I said, if you give me a fair shot, I'll take it. Okay? And he just looked at me because he probably never heard anything like that. I think he expected me to jump across the desk and be violent for him. I don't know what he thought. But camp started, and I was like destroyed. You know, and Dale was playing extremely well, and I knew that. I mean, Dale and I are very good friends. I knew that, you know, that I wasn't competing against him. I was competing against the opportunity to get minutes. And that was it. And he and I on the floor together, I thought would be lethal, right? Yeah. If I rebounded the ball better, if I tried harder on D, that I would maybe do some things that Dale didn't do as well as me. Okay. So I knew I was a better rebounder. Okay. And he and I were both, you know, not highly thought of as great defensive players, but we're thought of as great shooters and great scorers. But I thought it would work. And no matter what I did, in training camp, played well. The press was like, man, you got a good pickup in Eddie Johnson and blah, blah, blah. And he went out of his way to actually stop playing me, you know, enough minutes to do what I did because he didn't want to have to deal with it. And I sensed it, and it just bothered me. Yeah. You know, and so it took me to a place where I didn't like to go. And I went through depression. And I'm not ashamed to say it, I did. And it really bothered me. Yeah. And so I had a hard time getting rid of it. The kids were young at the time. And, you know, my family they got affected by it. And I hid it for a while. I truly did. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I had talked about it. Yeah. But I just didn't know. It was the first time I really experienced it. And it had me in a low place. Yeah. And the decision making went east and west. Yeah. And so, you know, it took me a while to get out of it, but that was a low point for me. And I had a reset, and I'm sure you read about it in the book. I left the NBA. And I went to Europe for a year, and no one understood why, but I knew that I needed to get away. I knew I could not go to another situation within the NBA because I thought then I would have probably really did things that really could have been harmful to me. And so I think that was a difficult situation. Yeah, it sounds like it. But what's crazy is the contributing factors that led up to that. So, you know, a toxic environment to be in, which kind of triggers that. And, you know, we don't necessarily know that going into an environment, what that's going to be like to kind of protect ourselves against it. Right. It's just, you know, you go into it and
at least for me, I always hope the best of somebody. I never think that somebody's going to want me to be unsuccessful, but you wrote about that in your book, that there are people who don't want to see you succeed.
Yeah.
And they will go out, like you said, they'll go out of their way to make sure that that happens. And what that did for you in your career, you had to transition and take a break.
Yeah.
But I think so many athletes these days don't necessarily think that, we don't realize the impact of our environment, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is that the environment is very powerful.
It's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
It can take you places that you don't want to be. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you're hearing things every day about athletes, spousal abuse,
Mm-hmm.
drugs, just violence. And it's very difficult. Like,
Yeah.
a number of weeks ago, Draymond Green punched his teammate. Now, I understand the place that Draymond Green could be in.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he's upset with contract negotiations with Golden State at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It affected him, and it carried over even toward his teammate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, those things happen, and you have to just check yourself and try to remove yourself from that situation. And
Yeah.
up until then, that time that it did take over me, I was able to navigate it.
Mm-hmm.
I had tough times. I had tough times before Alan Bristow. He took me over the top because he was the first coach that I ever had that did not judge me on my play. He just actually judged me because he just didn't want to play me. And I've never gone through that. Like, I've always won my coaches over. I've always said, give me a shot and I'll prove it to you.
Yeah.
And that's all I want from you. I don't want no handouts. I'll go take what I want.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in college. I went to the University of Illinois. I got there as an All-American, one of the top players in the country, along with Magic Johnson at the time, traveling around the world, playing in all-star games with him.
Wow.
I chose to go to the University of Illinois. And my coach, Lou Henson, didn't play me my first year that much. It was like, it was a hit. It was not only a hit to me, it was a hit to my family, it was a hit to my friends. Out of the Chicago area, they were all excited about me going to Illinois. They saw me not playing. A lot of my high school teammates, they were going to go to DePaul. They were coming down there trying to get me to pack my stuff up and leave. But I knew something I wasn't totally prepared yet. And Lou Henson told me that. He said, you're a hell of a player, Eddie, but it's hard to play when you're always on your back. I was 185 pounds, 6'7". They were knocking the stew out of me.
Yeah.
And so I just said, okay, coach, I got you.
Yeah.
And I lived in the weight room for 7 months.
You knew what you had to do.
I went to the weight room. I went from 185 to 220.
Oh, wow.
And I went back to practice and I beat the stew out of everybody, all those guys that were knocking me around. I destroyed them. And Lou Henson came up to me about 2 weeks before the season was getting ready to start. And he just passed away last year, a couple of years, a year and a half ago. And like a father figure to me. He said the magical words that any athlete would always want to hear. He told me, he said, I will never take you out of a game unless you tell me you're tired. And he didn't. He didn't. I started the next 3 years and I rarely came out of a game. And you know what? He told me what to go do. I went and did it and he rewarded me. That's all I asked for. That's it. I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
Just give me an honest chance and I'll go chase it. If I fail, fine. You're the better person. He got it. Okay. But just give me a chance.
Yeah. You're doing your part. All they have to do is their part, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I think that, your experiences and everything that you've gone through, you mentioned that you've trained and mentored some young athletes. What have you seen, I guess, in those athletes that you've worked with that you've used from your own experience and kind of help them along the way? Like, what nuggets of wisdom did you give them to help them?
It's very difficult, Jenna, for athletes to grow up in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, I didn't have social networking, didn't have a cell phone, none of that stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
know really what was going on around the world, on TV back then. In the 70s and 80s, only one news source. They weren't
Yeah.
broadcasting the news. I had a cousin that got shot right in broad daylight.
Oh,
That
wow.
wasn't on the news.
Oh, wow.
And so it was so easy for me to be obviously focused and resilient because if I just stayed in the house, and that's where my mom kept me, I didn't see these things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it was easy. For athletes today, it's hard.
Yeah.
Because they're privy to everything. They're on
Mm-hmm.
social networking. People are talking to them. People are more aggressive now and attaching themselves to these players. That it's just very hard on them to understand that life is not that easy, man. Don't you got
Mm-hmm.
you got to understand you're around yes people. You got to be around some no people
Yeah,
that
you
know,
talked about that in here.
that know what the word
Yeah.
no and and so for me and working with athletes and training them and trying to get them to understand, it was always difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed it. For 8 years, I worked for Adidas, and they call it Adidas Nations, where a lot of the NBA players right now in the league that I touched a time or another within training them.
Mm.
And all of them thought at Adidas Nations that they were going to go pro.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was there 8 years, maybe 20% of them made it to the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Although they were the best player on their high school team, they were all state, they were all American, and they weren't able to get into the club of about 450 basketball players in the NBA, which
Oh.
is a tough club to get into
Mm-hmm.
and
For
stay in.
sure. Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
a lot of them can get in there easy because they're getting in there on what projection, like, oh, he might
Mm-hmm.
be good. But then once
Mm-hmm.
they get in, they don't live up to expectations and they're out.
Yeah.
It's it's hard to get them to understand that and not relax.
Mm-hmm.
Just think that they have the world.
Yeah.
That's the case. And
Yeah.
so the mental part is the part that I enjoy with athletes now. I used to train them all the time. I think I've gotten over training. I don't have the
Mm-hmm.
patience anymore because of the way that the game is thought about. Like I was a
Yeah.
guy that like I was an all around offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
When I retired from the NBA, I was a 22nd all time scorer in the history of the game.
Nice.
And so I know how to score
Mm-hmm.
and I know the balance of scoring. But in this era of analytics and robot
Mm-hmm.
mentality, the 3-point shot and all of that is what's pushed on these young kids. And so
Mm-hmm.
I became frustrated in
Yeah.
trying to teach the game the right way to
Yeah.
them. And so I'm more on the mental side now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in your area. It's
Yes.
just trying to find out what's going on inside their head and I
Yeah.
getting on the court and working with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so important. What percentage do you believe is mental of the game? What percentage would you say?
Oh, man.
Hmm.
I would say, okay, I'll break it down like this. I
Okay.
would say mental, I would say physical, you got to be ready. You got to be built
Mm-hmm.
play at this high level. So I would say 40%. I would say 60 is mental.
Mm-hmm.
I really would. I would say mental plays a hard part. When you up there shooting a jumper,
Yeah.
case in point, I give you an example.
Okay.
Russell Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
He's a physical beast. Look at Russell Westbrook. It's like nobody fat, nothing, right?
Yeah.
Run all day, jump high, all of that. But right now, he's at the bottom because he can't shoot. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's struggling with the LA Lakers. And mentally, he's shot. Now
Yeah.
he pays attention too much to the critique around him.
Mm-hmm.
And so mentally, he's breaking down. It has nothing to do with his physical ability. It's
Yeah. I think
and that's important.
that's a huge point is, the failures that happen. So he can't shoot. It's like it's magnified because of the people around him, the social media, the press, everything is able to magnify that failure, which is only going to make that mental side of it worse.
Right.
And then you end up kind of in that cycle of why can't I get out of this?
Yeah.
So
it's a tough haul. Like, it's not easy. It's like, in 1988, 89, I got traded the year before here to Phoenix. And, the first year here in Phoenix, when I arrived, they were in the middle of a drug scandal. So I wasn't involved in it, but I got traded to a team that was in a huge drug scandal. Okay, it really devastated the organization.
Oh, wow.
And multiple players, and all of this. And so when I got here, I had a decent first year with them. Averaged like about 17 points and played well, but we didn't do well as a team. I think we won 28 games. But then, we made some trades. They traded Larry Nance, who's a very popular figure here. They traded him to Cleveland, and we got back in return Kevin Johnson, Mark West, Ty Corbin, and then we drafted Dan Marley, Tim Perry, Andrew Lang, and then we signed Tom Chambers as a free agent. And all of that maneuvering by Jerry Colangelo, owner of the team at the time, and Cotton Fitzsimmons, who in turn took over the coaching. Cotton Fitzsimmons was my first coach in the NBA. He's like my first father figure in the NBA. He's been gone a while now, but I mean he's the best father figure next to Lou Henson in college that I've ever had. And so the next year, after we have this team together and everything, Cotton, I go over to his house. He calls me over to his house and he says, "Eddie, look, if you don't play defense, I'm not going to play you much." Right. And he's always tried to motivate me. And so I'm like, okay, fine. Whatever. So season starts. And I'm a notorious slow starter in a sense. If you saw me in practice, you think I couldn't play because I practiced. I got myself always was in shape, never out of shape. But I just didn't enjoy that part of it. I enjoyed playing, and so we're going through it. And I have a decent preseason, but we start the season, and I had a really bad first two games. Oh, it was. I'm serious. I mean, I couldn't buy a shot. I don't know what it was. Maybe I wasn't, where I should be, being adjusted as a team. Whatever it was, I just stopped. And so we came back home to our home opener, and we were playing the Dallas Mavericks. And the Dallas Mavericks has on their team Mark Aguirre, who was my high school teammate, who was the number one player taken in the NBA draft in 1981. So I always was up to play against him. And so I'm preparing myself, as I always do.
Yeah.
I'm myself out of these doldrums, get myself right so I can start playing like I'm capable. And so I'm going through my normal stuff, on the bench, getting warm, got my heat packs going, knowing that I normally check into the game around the, maybe the 7-minute mark or the 6-minute mark of the first quarter. So I'm prepared. They call a timeout. And so I'm up, half taking off my warm-up because I know I'm ready to go in. He had to put me in. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go sit on the bench. And he didn't put me in the first quarter. So in the first quarter, so now I'm like, internally, I'm like, okay, here's a challenge.
Yes.
Go one or two ways. You can get ticked and let them know it, or you can stay composed. Right? At the end of the first quarter, he had gone into that game, Jenna. He wasn't going to play me. He was not going to play.
Oh, wow.
Because in the history of he and I, he always knew how to push my buttons. And he was going to just say, you know what? I'm going to send a message to him. I'm not playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the first quarter, we're down 15 points in the first quarter. Crowd booing, it's the home opener. And I'm just sitting down there, guys on the team, like, what? You
What's
okay?
going
What's wrong
on?
with you? Like, no, I'm good. I'm good. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
still, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't look at me. So second quarter starts, we're down 15. He gets up, puts another guy in before me. Puts another guy in. I'm sitting down there. I'm like, okay. Now I'm down here like there's only maybe three guys, and these other two are rookies. He has not even put me in the game. We're down maybe 19. Crowd just booing, booing. Where's Eddie? Like, then they started saying that. It was about 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. He relents. Eddie
Mm.
calls me. I jump up, go in, and I proceed to score 15 straight points.
Ah, look at that.
He got what he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and he knew it. He wanted to put me to a place that he knew he could get me to.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew I wasn't going to quit. He knew I was going to go out there and go crazy. And I
Mm.
did. And
Mm-hmm.
I wound up with 38 in the game.
Oh, wow.
And we came back from 19. And then he started me the next game. I had 40.
Hmm.
So he knew how to push my butt, but
Mm-hmm.
I had to stay still
Mm-hmm.
to get through the discipline of what he put me through.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could have gone south.
Yeah.
I could have gone out there and not played. And
That's
stomped.
yeah. I
And
mean,
athletes today don't know how to do that. And it's difficult for
mhm. I was going to say the importance of composure, in
them.
the things that I do is, mental performance and all of that is like, how do we take that emotion out of it so that it's this consistency across the board and you're not
Yeah.
this up and down based on whether you play well or don't play well or whether a coach puts you in or whatever the case may be, those external factors that happen, you're
Mm-hmm.
still a consistent line. So that's a good point to bring up is maintaining composure
Yes.
regardless of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
I mean, it can change your entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I try to instill in guys when I talk to them. Like,
Yeah.
careful what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can't come back from that. And
No.
it's hard to just eat it and walk away, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I remember after that game, he came up to me. That's how he talked. Told you. I know how to get it out of you. I just looked at him. I'm like, oh yeah, you know, yeah.
Well, that's
I mean, but I mean that was he was the guy that knew. He knew
yeah.
how to push buttons on me. And a lot of coaches they don't understand that with athletes right now. It's a robotic mindset of expectation
Mm-hmm.
without teaching, without staring to figure them out. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
saw a chapter in there where I said stare and figure them out.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rich Kelly guy to Stanford, white guy that didn't know how to dress, 7-footer, short sleeves was like right here on his arm. He's just a smart dude, and love him to
Yeah.
death because he taught me leadership.
Yeah.
Truly taught me, said, Eddie, you got to stare and figure people out. Because we always used to wonder, what's up with Rich Kelly? Why are you always staring at people? And I happened to sit next to him one day. He said, if you don't know somebody, it's good to just stare and figure them out from afar, then you know how to approach them.
Mm-hmm.
He said, why do you think sometimes you snap at your teammates when they approach you in an aggressive way?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I say something to you, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
He said, because I figured out the balance of you. I know when to approach you. I know
Yeah.
what to say to you. I know
Mm-hmm.
how to get you to react. And I took that to heart, and I used that on teammates. I used it,
Mm-hmm.
and then so every time I see him, I hug him. I even got to know his family, his mom and dad, because he was that impactful for me.
Yeah.
At a time where I was lacking that high level leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and I was taking all the shots, but yet I was quote unquote at that time the best player on the team.
Mm-hmm.
All that, but I wasn't doing my job in other areas, and
Yeah.
really opened my eyes to that.
Yeah, I think that's so important is, the kind of the whole concept behind this is the big picture of it, of not just you in the game, but who are you as a person.
Yes.
And that I think gets neglected, when you become an athlete, whether you're high school, college, that becomes your focus and you tend to forget about the other areas, the other aspects of your life that make you who you are. And then your sport becomes everything. But
Right.
that's one thing that I love about this was that it is very focused on who you are, and how do you present yourself to other people, and the relationships that you build and how you
Right.
speak to other people is so important, not just for the game that you're in, but in the overall picture of
Right.
life. Right.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a challenge. It's like it's not just sport. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to be a business.
Mm-hmm.
Like LeBron is the best example of an athlete I think we've seen in that he understands it. He's always in shape.
Mm-hmm.
He puts a lot of money towards his body, which he's
Mm-hmm.
obviously able to do. But
Mm-hmm.
even if he didn't have it, I think he'd just be in a gym like Sylvester Stallone and working with weights
Yeah.
that was archaic. I don't. It's not about the money. It's about the drive that he
Mm-hmm.
has to have the best body, to be in the best shape, so he
Mm-hmm.
can go about his craft and succeed. And
Yes.
and so he's the most balanced that I've probably ever seen
Mm-hmm.
in that regard. And so he definitely has the blueprint to a high level that I don't think many athletes would be able to get to. He'll be
Mm-hmm.
38 years old and he's still running and jumping just like he did 10 years ago,
Wow.
which is sickening to
Mm-hmm.
watch and see.
That's crazy. Yeah, you said a key word there, balance. I like that, balance. Because we
Yeah,
get, whether you're in sports or not in sports, everything is about balance at the end of the day. Is like, how are you going to balance your life, your family, your job, everything? And sometimes we get caught up and our priorities
yeah.
get messed up.
Or
And
put too much into it. Like
mm-hmm,
if you focus too much into basketball,
mm-hmm,
it can be a negative. And I've mentored some guys, and these guys are like virtual Hall of Famers,
mm-hmm.
okay, at one point in time, especially after I retired. And I was mentoring players, and this one player was always depressed, and I knew it. And I asked him, I said, "What do you do when you go home
Mm-hmm.
after the game?" And he's like, "Watch film." I'm like, "Do you do anything else?" Like, I mean, he did play golf, but he didn't do it all the time. But he didn't do anything.
Hmm.
Like I said, do you even do your own bill? No. I have somebody to do my bills. I have somebody to lay my clothes out. I have a cook. I'm like, so that's all you do is play basketball. I said, don't you see that's why you a wreck? Because
Yeah.
you never get away from the very thing that's taxing you and stressing you out.
Mm-hmm.
Balance, man. Like you do your own bills, man. Sit down and just learn about money and do your bills, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Play more golf. Do things away from the
Yeah.
game that's gonna balance you. So when you go back to the game, you missed it. For that particular amount of hours, you did it, and you have more energy to put into it.
Yeah.
He
So
just looked
true.
at me. He just looked at me. He had a hard time understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
Because for his life, he's been catered to. And he never had to carry his own gym bag. He never, I mean, he was like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. You remember that movie?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like everything
Mm-hmm.
was just everything. I mean, everything he did, even going to the restroom, he had cleaners. That's Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. That was this guy.
Oh
He
man.
didn't do anything on his own.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you're right though. What kind of life is that like to be that consumes everything? It's just you gotta have balance. You gotta have other things and your own sense of like autonomy, being able to do your own bills, doing your laundry for heaven's sakes. Like that's a
Yeah.
huge piece is that that autonomy factor. Like I'm independent of other people. Yeah. So that's a huge,
Yeah.
huge
And having
deal.
a long time. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to have people around you all the time. Like, I was
Mhm.
a loner, okay?
Mhm.
And I was good by myself. Like,
Mhm.
getting away and like I locked myself in the office, away from my family. I had a cabin up north. I'd go up north when I
Mhm.
was going to write that book.
Mhm.
Like, I really got heavily into writing. I love to read
Mhm.
as much as I want to over the last number of years, and I miss it. I'm so busy, but just writing, I love to do that. I learned it in college, whereas I was one that couldn't just sit there and study and look at a book.
Mhm.
I'd write the book.
Mhm.
I'd like write it out because I would memorize it better than just looking at it and trying to memorize it.
Mhm.
But to each its own. But it's those types of things that I encourage athletes to do. Just get off
Yeah.
and just get away from the sport that you love, but it
Mhm.
taxes you, and so
Mhm.
you have to get that reboot, that reset. That when you
Yeah.
go back to it, you're going at it full bore.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. That's so important. Well, so is there anything else you want to share? I know we talked about a lot. We covered a lot. I think it's your experience is very valuable and what you have to give to athletes, and I definitely appreciate it. Anything else that you
Yeah,
feel
I
is
mean,
necessary that you
yeah,
want to
because
share?
we talking about
Yeah,
focus and resilience and the ways to help people, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's what you do for a living. You want
Mm-hmm.
to help people. I mean, you don't get into what you do just to make money. You want to help
No.
people. You got to have
Mm-hmm.
that mindset. And
Yeah.
what I've tried to do, just in general, because of where I came from, the struggles
Mm-hmm.
that I grew up in, I've always tried to attach myself to entities that I feel like I'm helping people. And
Mm-hmm.
so over the years, I've had programs in the city in Phoenix where I had an at-risk program called
Mm-hmm.
Accept the Challenge, where I was targeting potential dropouts in high school. I did a lot of stuff for big brothers, big sisters, because
Right.
again, those kids need somebody outside their family to come in and maybe take the responsibility of a parent they don't have.
Yeah.
I love that organization. And then I attached myself when I was done playing to Helping Hands for Single Moms, obviously
Mm-hmm.
an event that you attended and you
Yep.
saw it. And so my goal was to help single moms because my mom was a single mom. She raised
Mm-hmm.
7 kids on her own. And then obviously, as we talked about the athletes and the young people today,
Yeah.
how can we keep them focused? And
Yeah.
when I saw a stat where 50% of college freshmen drop out after their first year, it's alarming.
Mm-hmm.
The reason it's alarming is because they're going to school not understanding the responsibility that they're going to have now without someone looking over their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, I've attached myself to a company that has an app that's called Our25.ai.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it helps students, it helps employees, it helps people in general stay focused and resilient. It's just a nice, kind reminder that
Mm-hmm.
the goals that you set, you're not on track for them because you're on your phone, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook,
Yeah.
Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, you're spending more time on it than you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So this app is getting ready to come out very soon. It's going to help you with focus and resilience. It's not going to be that invasive. It's only going to be
Yeah.
invasive best based on the settings that you put in the app. And it will
Mm-hmm.
come in and remind you. And when you need help, it will guide you to individuals like yourself, psychologists,
Mm-hmm.
people in the field that have written articles you can go read or watch a video that they made, or sooner than later, a live connection to
Mm-hmm.
help people get themselves back on track to reach their goals, especially students when they're
Yeah.
in the dorm room by themselves, they're away from mom and dad, and
Yeah.
then they have, okay, I got a test Monday, but it's a party tonight. huh, right?
Yeah.
Or sitting there
Yeah.
studying and all of a sudden pull their phone out and they're basically on TikTok.
Yep.
And the app will come in and remind them, you've been on TikTok for 2 hours. You got a test tomorrow. You need some
Hmm.
help. You
Yeah.
need resilience. And so I've
I
involved myself
love that.
in our 25.ai. That's going to be out. So things like that, I just continue to try to stay
Yeah.
involved with because my mission is to help leave
Hmm.
behind as much as I can
Hmm.
because, Jenna, you can't take it with you.
No.
I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse.
No.
I
Yeah, we
once
do.
heard a joke, though. This guy said, I want all the money left in my casket. I want it all. He told his wife, I don't care. I bury me with all my money.
Hmm.
And she did. She
Hmm.
did. Can you believe she did?
No,
She
that's
wrote him.
crazy.
Yeah, but she wrote
Yeah.
him a check. She wrote him a check, Jim.
Oh man, like
How's he gonna cash that check?
that's 6 feet underground. I don't know. Like, what are we gonna do with that? That's just crazy. No, it brings up a good point. Like we're all here to give back and to serve a purpose in some way. And sometimes we get so caught up in a consumer mindset of like me, 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 what can I do for me? And the whole idea of social media makes that worse. And so this app sounds like a brilliant idea to help those student athletes with that because there's so many distractions these days. Like I even find myself, I'm like, what am I doing? Like I have work to get done, and it's
Yeah.
just a very normal thing now in our society. So we've got to pull those away, those distractions, and be able to focus, I think.
It's doing its job though, right? Like
Yeah.
TikTok is doing its job, Twitter is doing its job. What it
Mm-hmm.
was made for is exactly what it's doing. It's making
Yeah.
billions of dollars.
Yep.
So now you got to have something to help you balance your addiction to
Mm-hmm.
AI technology.
Yep.
And that's the trade-off here. And for
Mm-hmm.
young people, it's very difficult. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have to find a way to really keep them focused and resilient
Yeah.
to things out there that take their attention. And it's not
Yep.
AI technology, it's drugs, it's
Yeah.
bad friends,
Yeah.
peers that want you to do the wrong thing,
Mm-hmm.
all those things. But I would say AI technology right now is the
Yeah.
quiet killer.
Mm-hmm.
You just sit at home all day and just stare at your phone.
Yeah, well, and you have that, not only have the technology, you have what it's exposing you to on the other side of that. So,
Yeah,
then you have to fight against, all these different things. I competed in bodybuilding, and so you'd have a tendency to look at all these other bodybuilders and compare yourself. And what does that do for your own self-esteem and self-worth? Is
right,
like puts it in the toilet because now you're comparing. And so it's not only the distraction of technology, it's what's on the other side of that too. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine. I mean, it has to be the drive for you too when you're competing against so many people where it's kind of hard to really like you got to as a judge, you're looking and it's like you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing everybody pretty much close to the same.
Yes,
So what's different? And then
exactly.
you're thinking like, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, what is he thinking? What is wrong with me? What do I need to?
Right.
I
Right.
can't even imagine how difficult that was. Yeah,
Yeah. And we do that and you compare and you eventually come to the conclusion that it's me and I'm competing against myself.
right.
So, and it may have been that way for you in basketball, but it's you eventually come to that of like I have to beat who I was a year ago. Like as long as I'm going to be better than I was yesterday, then that's what matters. Because
Yeah,
I can't compare myself to the next highest level competition. The only thing I
right.
have control over is me. So
Exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly.
super awesome. Well, I love the work that you're doing, the app, the Helping Hands for Single Moms, super amazing. And I definitely appreciate you being on this with me and sharing time, an hour of your time, because I know you're very, very busy. But yeah, I just want to tell you I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, and you're doing good
Yeah,
work. I mean, to have people come on and talk about this, and then be able to put it out there for
yeah,
people that's a little shy and
yeah.
probably not strong enough to admit things, and
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that they can go to and
Mhm.
see, and then be able to break out of where they are based on what we talk about. So
Yep.
you're doing great
Yeah.
things, and so keep it
Yeah.
up.
Awesome. Thank you.